All right, guys, we're gonna get started here. Well, like other folks gather, go ahead and say hi in the chat if you just come in now. So excited to get into this topic. This is something that I've been spending a lot of time on lately, which is around effectively how AI is gonna dramatically change a lot of things in the HR world, especially with automation. And we're just gonna do a super quick talk, but then just go just towards like the bottom of the hour and make sure there's enough time for reviewing questions and making this as practical as possible. That's always my goal in any of these webinars or talks, is to have like just one practical thing that people can take away from it. So just by way of introduction, everyone, I'm Thomas Kunjapu, founder and CEO of Cleary. We are a leading employee experience platform where we think about the entire life cycle for people, for employees, from the moment they accept an offer all the way through becoming an alumni. And it's a software as a service platform, but we've been investing in looking at how the whole world is shifting and all the different opportunities that are then being made available with the advent of generative AI. And so that's really what this talk is going to be about, because we want to make things practical for folks as they come in with a couple of, I guess, preconceived notions or pressures internally. So first, we'll just do some like real talk. I talk to HR folks almost every day, whether they're customers or not, and we're just always like sharing challenges and things like, we need to do more with less. There are fewer HR jobs available now, or the role is more things are being expected of us to be doing, and we're constantly in reactive mode. People are telling us to figure out AI, and not just us, but everyone across the board, figure out how AI will fit into your team and our strategy. So if you've felt any of those things like bubble up, I want to make a case more broadly for like why this actually is a broad industry-wide challenge for all of us to figure out. And then want to go through the meat of this is to kind of go through an analysis that we've done with a fast growth startup, where we looked at a couple of quarters worth of HR ticketing data and just like inbound, what do employees need from like HR, to basically uncover some nuggets here, which we think are broadly applicable, but also there could be nuances per company, but we'll go into that. And then talk a little bit about the AI path forward. And really the last two sections, we're going to be kind of doing kind of like mixed in together, because we'll go through some use cases and how it's generally done today and how it can like evolve to tomorrow, but then hopefully leave you with some tips on the best place to get started if you're trying to revamp like workflows, right? So let's start with some like real talk. So what are some of the current challenges, right, that we've seen? So there is a seismic shift going on for the HR function at the moment. It's playing out. It's going to be playing out over multiple years, but it's more broadly for every function that is under G&A. So legal, finance, operations, all these functions, including HR, around what is being expected of you going forward with a new world of efficiency, right? So couple of things I wanted to call out. There's this awesome report, this Aon report, about how AI is transforming HR and the workforce. One thing is that, just more broadly, it's talking about, hey, everyone in AI needs to figure out how in your own role you can deploy AI as like one layer, but then also how can you prepare your entire workforce to leverage that, and how the workforce is going to change your workforce that you're supporting in your organization. How is that going to change over a medium and long term as well? And so it's super important for everyone to be thinking about this. There's a lot of optimism that there's going to be just a lot of enhancements, right? So things that you're doing today might not be the workflows that you're gonna be doing, years from now, at least in like a 5-year kind of time horizon, right? So there is a lot of optimism amongst our peers about, hey, the possibilities here, and that actually, and I feel like it's breaking a stereotype a little bit, but HR folks are generally optimistic about ways that AI can be put into their workflows to enable them further, right? And then it's pretty low-ish numbers. About 38% of HR folks, decision makers, are currently using AI in some kind of form in their workflow today. That is, it's just a matter of a few years before that's going to be 100, right? It's like, people aren't going to be even tracking if you're using, I don't know, Google searches in how you do your work every day, for example, is going to be in the similar kind of format. But that's at the broadest level. But I want to make the case that now really is the time to act. And those of you who are like tuning in, if any of those things that I mentioned, please drop it in the chat. If anything like resonates, like, hey, like my boss or our company strategically is everyone's asked to go in and check out how AI can be used in our team, right? Or we need to do more with less. So there's a report here. It's pretty interesting about how clearly HR teams, you're getting less of headcount and budget, post the zero interest rate, high growth world of 22 and 23, but the amount of workload on you is actually increasing, right? And so the adoption curve are extremely early on in terms of like, AI and how it can actually be adopted into all of these like workflows. So this is a great time to retool, reskill, and re-workflow, which we'll go into in depth here, various things that we're doing in one way today that can actually be changed into a different way tomorrow. And the reality is, some of these things in terms of skill investments, both for HR as well as the broader organization, it takes time to manifest in outcomes, for the organization overall, right? Like, in terms of like revenue growth or like stock growth. But a lot of companies are probably already behind, right? Because it takes a while to actually get trained, upskill, rethink in this way for how you might actually leverage and deploy AI in your day-to-day workflows. It's a great report from Gartner on this, which I can share as well. So if that's all true, and now is like the time to act, there's an interesting question about, well, like how exactly, let's get more specific. Where is AI and all the many, many things that we need to do in HR? Where is it likely going to make the biggest impact? And people analytics as a function has been like a relatively newer concept over the last decade, and a lot of companies don't have a specific person for that. But clearly, there's a lot of analysis, dashboarding, reports, insights, action that AI can take. Can be leveraged for within people analytics. A lot is actually already happening in talent acquisition, aka recruiting. That's where you're seeing a lot of human applicants fighting bots as they're trying to get into the recruiting funnel in a place where employers are starting to feel like they have a little bit of a stronger of a hand. And so it's actually, there's a lot of experimentation, I'll call it, like going on there more than anything else. But then something that we've noticed is like the biggest miss and like actually the easiest benefit from AI is actually around HR operations. So this is the key area, which actually is not really being considered for leveraging AI and automation. And furthermore, it's actually something that cuts across, right? So we kind of put it up as a what if it's like a separate graph, but really it cuts across all these other layers. So it's the tactical, mundane, everyday kind of things that you have to do, which probably goes across different aspects when you're dealing with managers or new employees or an offboarding workflow or going through a promotion cycle or trying to stand up a new program. It's actually this layer of work, which we can call like HR operations, which is going to be the place where we can see the biggest impact across the board. And so that's what we're seeing, and that's the case that we're going to be making based on just looking at some like tickets and all the stuff that people spend time on today. So what does it come down to? What we're going to go through in detail is come back and basically prove this out, which is that, well, probably about 15 hours each week of HR professional can be spent just answering questions or responding to employees or managers or the organization, being in reactive mode for all types of things, which if you break down can ultimately be dramatically saved. So the highlight from our analysis is that the majority of people operations functions, all those things that straddle every other sub-function within HR, it can be automated with relative ease with AI. And by that, I'll get into our model of what we're talking about, but we're just kind of talking about how the industry is going to evolve. Not every solution exists yet, but it's kind of a little bit forward looking. But a lot of these things are going to happen like right away, including, of course, with us as Cleary being one of the innovators here with relative ease, meaning in a matter of months, these things are all going to be fully automatable. And that is something you can translate to basically saying, well, take one full day of work back, right? For all the employee support model that you have, like pretty much for large organizations, you have it split up. But for most teams of HR that are, under 5 people, if you take talent acquisition out of it, we're talking about getting a full day's worth of time back per week based on what AI can leverage for you guys. And so let me prove it to you a little bit in depth with the analysis that we did and also our model for how all of this kind of works. If you have any questions, even like so far, please drop it in the chat and I'll try to make sure we get to it, right? Every single thing. So the question asked is, for your organization, if you're trying to get the whole HR team 20% more productive or have more time available, how would you do it? That's maybe a question to ask yourself in the background as I kind of go through this analysis and the outcomes that we came up with, right? So the first thing is this, just an HR service delivery model, how it tends to work out. So there's this pyramid, right? At the bottom, you have a tier 0 support, which are basically things that employees and managers need from you in HR. And they're kind of basic requests. And really, because they're basic requests, should be self-service, right? So, hey, I want to know what our PTO policy is, or I want to know how I can take a day off, or figure out a policy for how I will do travel for the sales team. And so these things are probably everyone here has a knowledge base, or you've at least got like Google or Word docs somewhere, or a SharePoint. You're just creating stuff somewhere, hoping that people will look at it. That can be made much more efficient. But then besides that, there's tier 1 support, which today is this really fat middle layer, which is all of those simple requests that people are asking you, whether it's, messaging you privately, emailing a ticketing system platform that you've generated if you're at scale, or messaging an email listserv that you've set up with questions where, if you really look at it, it's like, wow, why am I spending time, or why is my team spending time responding to these things? And there's a lot of that, which is extremely inefficient. And then you get to tier 2 support, which is where you get to subject matter expertise in HR, right? That's where things are complex or nuanced, like, hey, someone is about to go on bereavement leave and we need to make sure we're processing this absolutely properly. Or there is a particular compensation request, which has a lot of nuances that you really need the compensation expert within the org to actually deal with, right? So that's that layer, which can still be made more efficient, but is this piece that tends to go to subject matter experts. So it's a pretty simple model of the world. And what we've done is, for example, analyzed over 3,000 tickets for this one fast growth tech company over just a quarter to understand what is actually taking up this team's time, right? And basically, I want to illustrate through some use cases what we found out, and then we'll summarize it at the end in terms of opportunities. And you can think about how this might play out for your organization as well, right? So what we're looking at are all the tickets, because employees and managers, after they get onboarded, are told, hey, if you have anything, you got to go file a ticket in this case and make this thing happen, right? So in that case, there's a few different use cases that we've come across. So number one is these simple questions that should have been self-service. So can I make changes to my commuter benefits, right? So someone is going, I have a Slack example up here. Maybe you're using Teams, maybe you have an email service, or maybe someone might even stop, the person in the hallway, right? So, hey, I need to travel, or I have this question. And a lot of what we see in this kind of realm are things that should not be something that is even asked to begin with. So the employee kind of wishes they could find it better themselves and not have to bother someone. And on the HR side, you're basically repeating yourself. So if you've felt like, oh my God, didn't I go over this? We talked about this in onboarding, or I'm sending this link yet again. This is actually a common kind of occurrence, and Gen AI and the patterns that we can see with this is actually going to shift this a little bit. So that instead of it happening this way, the way it can happen in the future is actually with, in this case, a Slack bot or some kind of technology that'll actually disintermediate this so that you can actually just respond to this thing automatically. So if any of you use ChatGPT, right, you're asking a question for these like simple things. There's like a similar version of that people can interface with for the company. And we've actually noticed one of the reasons that HR folks are really shy about a solution like this is because you want to be the face. You want to make sure that you have a personalized experience for your employees. So you want to know that, hey, there's a real person here who's going to answer your questions. It's not like a bank where you're just like on hold trying to get like someone for support. And so we actually have developed a unique solution which goes into the existing channels and that you have with your employees. For example, in this case, a public Ask HR Slack channel, and can answer things on your behalf if you've already documented it or you've answered this question in the past in the same way. And on the flip side, it can actually take things that you're answering today, like for example, if Michael here is the HR person who's responding, well, they can respond manually, and now from here on, we can automatically take that information and drop it into your knowledge base for future reference. And so this is a very simple use case of things that are like repetitive and really should have been self-service, sort of like knowledge lookups, knowledge information, knowledge management, information lookups. And use case number 2, it's kind of similar. It feels the same to all parties, but everyone's kind of going through the motions, but these are workflows. So it's not like, hey, I want to look up this policy, or can you send me this information? It's, I'm trying to process this particular thing, right? So, hey, I want to get access, for example, here, hey, I need to enable my new hire. And so this manager needs to fill out a certain form that they need to do as a matter of course for every single new hire. And well, balls can get dropped, or what it ends up being is on your plate in HR to make sure the thing gets done. So sending a reminder to the manager, ensuring that the particular tasks get done on a particular schedule, well, that is all tedium, right? So that can actually be completely automated as well with just slick integrations across your various systems. And it really should not be something that you're spending your precious energy on in HR support. So that's another area where it's a combination of automation and AI coming in to flip out this particular type of use case of workflows. And so, for example, with like Cleary AI, you might have, hey, here's the new system's access, instead of manually going through a form and making sure that this person is creating, you're going in, creating a form, or like emailing with the person. You can just collect that information in the onboarding process and then have that particular task assigned to the right person in IT, or have it happen done automatically depending on the actual like workflow, right? So all of these types of workflows can either be automatically reminded and task set, or just automatically completed depending on the kind of task that it is that needs to be done. But if you just step back and analyze you and your team's time, this is what you end up spending a decent amount of effort on, is responding to these repeatable tier 1 workflows. So that's an example of use case number 2, right? Use case number 3, it feels a bit similar, but we got to have the big C in here, compliance. So it's a request from an employee or a manager or somewhere from the organization. It is pretty simple to execute on, but for compliance reasons, you want to make sure that you and HR, you're double checking this thing and making sure that this is right. For example, employee verification letter request, right? And actually different companies have different approaches for this, but let's say you really want to make sure every single request that comes in from an employee, someone in HR is double checking. Well, how does it happen today? Well, you get a request, someone like files a ticket, you're searching for this, like hopefully you have some kind of template because you've done this before, or maybe you're duplicating a previous one that you've created. You're looking up the employee information in one system, another system. You're editing this template, setting up your email, getting ready to do a response, and then like sending it out. So this could obviously be streamlined a little bit by just getting you to this last stage, so that the copy that you need to send and the actual template is all just completely spliced and made ready for you automatically, so that you can save a bunch of time. So that's kind of that's going to save a lot of time for these kind of use cases where you want to leverage AI, but still be in the loop to do that final check. But that's dramatically going to reduce the time so that you can focus on more strategic work, even on these kinds of requests, right? So in this case, think of it as, AI being like a co-pilot for you. So you get the verification letter request. Maybe someone's like saying, like, the employee first is figuring out, how do I do this? They're going to the intranet, or they're going somewhere to like the HR pages or who to contact, and they figure out, okay, this is the person they need to contact. I need an employee verification letter. And then sure, like they just get responded to right away. You're not like triaging. So right away, the employee understands what's happening and what's happening next. They're not like waiting for a day or two before any kind of like response. They understand exactly what's happening. So you've set up that workflow. And then, for example, with Cleary AI, we can auto-generate the letter based on the template and the response. And for you to just double check and then click the button and say, yep, this is good to go. So it's a dramatically different experience for you on the HR side, and on the employee side, it'll just be smoother, and they'll just know how to go to, what to go to or who to go to for things can be just abstracted. They can just ask the thing and they'll know when the next step will happen, right? So I want to go through one more use case of the kinds of things that can really be made more efficient. So truly complex tier 2 types of requests that end up needing a lot of back and forth. So an example is our like a parental leave policy and someone actually trying to go through that process, right? So now this is complex enough that some companies are using third parties to help you with this, or with like a PEO, for example. But the reality is there tends to be a lot of back and forth, a lot of questions. So you're asking back to the employee about, hey, when are you leaving? What state are you in? Here, fill out this form, fill out this next form, contact this next person. So there is some complexity from the user or employee's perspective. And then depending on the use case and the expertise on your team, you're spending time figuring out exactly how you're going to process this and maybe escalate it to someone else. And then, well, you mean externally, and then you're going back and sending forms to the employees to execute on. And there's a ton of back and forth with multiple parties. And the idea here is that you will still need that last layer of that expert layer of the expert who is going to actually ultimately make decisions or clarify requirements. However, all the back and forth that happens beforehand can happen much more efficiently. So information, first of all, can be much more self-service for employees around what to expect for specific questions that they need to ask. Because employees in this case, they have different questions at different times of a parental leave journey. So if you're requesting something, you want to know the answer at that moment versus kind of trying to go through a long document, which is typically what it is, like a knowledge base or someone that you need to contact ultimately. So you can actually help get some of these things self-service. And then based on where things are, a lot of in the journey, HR ends up spending a lot of time, for example, keeping track of things over multiple months in this kind of complex request, right? So you're not trying to remember to tell the manager 1 month ahead of the person returning that they are returning and that they should prepare for it. But instead, you can actually set up these workflows where things can happen automatically. The manager knows what they need to know, and the employee can know what they need to know even before they ask you. So it's like getting into people's heads before they even ask the question. So you're like preempting the search or the question by doing proactive communications in these moments in the employee journey. And it can be preset with your templates and your policies and with the escalation policies in place, right? So all of this together just will help HR teams get out of reactive mode. You can get a sense of, okay, what are the requests that you've gotten recently? How can I improve my content based on this? What should I focus, this time that I'm starting to open up to do proactive work on? Well, it would say like, well, here's what the analysis says, here are the types of tickets, and here are the kind of questions that keep coming up over and over again. So it's automatically getting better, but maybe you want to review this. So all of that in sum is going to come back to cutting off significant time in this being time in being reactive mode, right? So the really cool thing that we're like offering here in this world for this feedback loop, we call it, where employees asking a question, you answer the question, Well, guess what we can do? We can automatically take that question and document it. So now take that answer and document it, and now it's a part of your knowledge base. A month later, someone else asks similar question. Well, we can help answer that for you and keep the same channels that you have open in place, but then you don't need to actually come in there live unless there's like an issue or there's a change. And meanwhile, you're kind of zooming out a bit more out of these requests that are really they should be self-service requests, right? So that's a really cool example that I like that we see like over and over again. And so zooming way out based on this analysis, right? When we looked at thousands of tickets, what we saw was that there's to get to that conclusion of over half of this being like automatable in an attainable kind of level, right? So I have some examples here of the kinds of things that are like very easy to automate, whether it's employment verification requests or benefit inquiries, service requests, global mobility kind of requests, all these things that end up taking a lot of time and is high volume that can be very easy to automate like right away. And then some other things in this attainable category are things where there's more complexity, a little bit more based on the specific systems that you're using, like a specific request, data request, or like a resignation notice, like what are all the series of things that you want to have happen after the fact, or how there's a reporting request about certain HR data. It really kind of depends with nuance, but that can also be tweaked and systems can be built up over time. And then it's coming in short order, but even more complex inquiries like, hey, I need access to this like one tool that I didn't get access to, or hey, the promotion process that I'm following as a manager, I wanted to ask this specific question about this specific employee, right? Those kind of things where it's going to be ready for future automation, but maybe with a human in the loop, right? So that's this other category. And overall, when we look at this, right, so there is this between like the first two, you get to this high level of this high percentage of ticket breakdown in that level. So before we get to questions, trying to really squeeze it in at the end there to get to things by the half hour to make sure that I'm able to answer any questions. I want to make sure that if you have any questions, drop it in the chat or you're welcome to come up and chat with us. But number one, if you are interested in us doing a similar analysis of your processes, whether it's the current knowledge base that you have and what are all the gaps that that's leaving, or like we've done here, and we kind of went through what are all the tickets and all the things that people are asking of you and your team to figure out the easiest paths for automation, like with AI. Well, we're happy to do that. Feel free to reach out. You can find us at gocleary.com, and you can always find me at thomas@gocleary.com. But then beyond that, we do have a Cleary community focused specifically on the future of HR and actually specifically future-proofing HR. So if you're interested personally in future-proofing your career within HR and also your team more broadly, it's a great nascent community of folks who are really trying to be thinking ahead and thinking about where things are evolving. So we're sometimes going to be getting into the weeds of like very specific use cases and how we can make that more efficient. And sometimes we're like zooming way out on, for example, the labor market and how things are shifting with AI. So check out the community. Please feel free to join it. We also have this HR chatbot that we're going to be launching for free soon. We've been working on that with our core pilot customers, and we'd love for you to check it out as well. It's, as I kind of went through, it's trying to scrape just the initial surfaces of just helping people be more efficient, leveraging AI, because we just strongly believe there's so much opportunity for HR to just improve all these different workflows with AI, but there's kind of a gap between all the different systems of record and software that we're using, and then like separately this concept of AI or like ChatGPT, but really seeing it work in your day-to-day flows. That's what we're doing with this chatbot. So check it out, join the waitlist if you want to hear more. Obviously, we'll be talking about that in one of the channels in our community as well. So thank you all for your attention and going through that analysis with me. So with that said, I'm going to see if there are any questions, or if anyone is interested, Stephen can bring you up into the chat and we can just chat about, whatever it is that you're looking to solve for at the moment. And I'm going to stop sharing for a second here. Who is brave? Nice, Stephen. Come on up. I'd invite you. Or if you want to chat privately, happy to do that as well. This is an area that I know everyone is looking at ways to improve, ways to invest. So I think this is especially an area where no question is a dumb question. So we'll see if everyone wants to be brave, but meanwhile, I'll just leave you just like with one thought here. So one of the things, journeys that I've personally been on with AI in this landscape is kind of going from someone who sees that like this is kind of an advancement. It's like one more advancement in AI, which has been technology has been worked on for decades. Through into the last year, as we've been experimenting specifically with our customers, seeing all these different pathways where we can actually like inject it. I've been on this personal journey of seeing just how much it is really going to be just changing the way all of us like work, more broadly across the board, but specifically in HR, how we need to work on supporting what that function looks like in the future, as well as how we need to support employees so that everyone is getting skilled and reskilled, leveraging these tools. So the best thing that is the biggest teacher for me has been these specific use cases, like trying to understand from our customers, what exactly are they, seeing take a lot of time that they wish would take a lot less, and seeing how that just like perfectly melds with these use cases for generative AI. And so we've always been looking just for practical solutions versus any hype. And at this point, there's so much data out there to say that there's going to be a lot of practical solutions, and those who are staying up with the latest will be well served as the roles across the board will be changing in the coming years. All right, guys. Well, with that said, I'm going to turn it off here, so I don't see any other questions come in here. I haven't seen the stream there, but want to thank you all for joining, and please join the community, join the waitlist, and hope to see you all there. Till next time.